Hello, and welcome to Autoimmune Voices, Threads of Hope, the brand new podcast being brought to you by the Autoimmune Association. I'm Molly Murray, and I'm president and CEO of the Autoimmune Association, and I could not be more thrilled to be launching this podcast here with you today. Our goal is to raise awareness about autoimmune disease, share powerful stories, and build a community of support. As you may know, autoimmune diseases affect up to 50 million Americans, but their impact goes way beyond just the numbers. In this podcast, we'll be bringing you real stories from the autoimmune community, and we'll be hearing firsthand from patients, advocates, doctors, scientists, and policy leaders who are really shaping the future of autoimmune care. From groundbreaking research to everyday challenges of living with autoimmune diseases, we're going to be diving into the conversations that matter. I am absolutely thrilled to be kicking off this first podcast with Olympic swimmer Paige Madden. Paige, welcome.
Hi, Molly. Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be a part of this first edition of this podcast. It's really such an honor, and I think it's a great cause.
Absolutely. And we are so excited to get into this and hear your story and just appreciate the awareness that you're bringing to autoimmune disease. Paige, you are, you're a two-time Olympian, a three-time Olympic medalist from the 2021 Tokyo Olympic Games and the Paris Games, of course, this past summer. Paige won a silver medal as part of the 4x200 meter freestyle relay, and she won her first individual medal with the bronze in the 800 meter freestyle. She's truly, gave us all a remarkable performance, and it was just so much fun to watch. I wanted to mention that, Paige, beyond your athletic achievements, you also live with an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and she is using her platform to raise awareness about this disease and other autoimmune diseases, and to really share her journey and inspire others, in the autoimmune community. So with that, Paige, let's get started and dive in. Again, so thrilled that you're here. I've really been looking forward to this conversation, and kind of, thinking about, what we're talking about here today. I want to dive into, not only your journey as, Paige the athlete, but also Paige the person, and how these two aspects of yourself have been influenced by living with a chronic illness, and certainly any lessons that you've learned along the way. But before we get into all of that, let's kind of go back to the beginning. Growing up in Mobile, Alabama, when you first started swimming, and really, what sparked your interest?
Yeah, that's a good question. And first of all, thank you for saying Paige the person. That has been something that I struggled with for a long time, especially after graduating college and becoming a pro swimmer. But the reason I got into swimming in the first place is my older brother Carl. He's 4 years older, and he swam, and I wanted to be just like him. I looked up to him so much. He's such a great guy and just a great all-around person. And I think I was just determined to be like him. And so he kind of sparked my interest there. When I first started learning how to swim, I would wear um, floaties on my arms, as well as an inner tube and a pool noodle, and I'd only get on the first step. But we've come a long way since then.
You certainly have.
And yes, and I progressed from a guppy to a shark in swim lessons. I just wanted so badly to be a shark, and here we are.
Love it. Yeah, and you're just having somebody in your life that inspires you to sort of take that first step, and having somebody to look up to certainly has taken you a long way. And I love that you didn't want to get into the water, and now look at you now, right? When
Yeah.
kind of along that journey and getting started with swimming, when did you realize, like, gosh, you know what? I'm pretty good at this. I think I'm passionate about this, right? I'm passionate about swimming, and I really want to put the effort into excelling at this.
I think I definitely wasn't very good when I first started out. Like I said, I was very timid, um, just a little. In order to be a good swimmer, you have to know how to relax in the water, and I didn't know how to do that. I was kind of thrashing around. Um, But the important thing was that I knew how to swim. I don't remember exactly when it was, or if there's one thing that like initially sparked that desire to be really good. Um, I do know my first swim meet ever. Um, so you have someone, a coach or a helper who's in the water to help the little kids learn how to swim or to get to the other side. And when I dove in, I had my helper and I was struggling a little bit. And so I think that they were approaching me to try and help me. And I was kind of like, no, 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 like, don't help me, don't help me. Like, don't touch
Hands
me. I
up.
want to be able to do it all by myself. And my mom says I cried the whole way, but I made it to the other side without any help. And then they gave me like a sweet treat, like an ice cream or something like that. And then I was like so proud that I had done it. So
The motivation of ice cream, it's certainly something that motivates me in
it's a
my own life.
powerful thing. It's a
It is a
powerful thing.
powerful thing. Well,
Hmm.
I love that. And, kind of overcoming, sort of being timid and leaning into it and sticking with it and where it got you. Take us to, you're now 13, right? You're swimming, you're obviously sticking with it and excelling at it. And that's when you were first diagnosed with Hashimoto's, right? I think you were 13 years old. Can you tell us a little bit about what was, going on at that time in your life? And did you even know what Hashimoto's was?
Yeah, I had no idea what it was. I had actually gone to see, um, I'd just gone to general practitioner because I was so ill. I was so sick. I think I had the flu or something like that. And they did a full examination and they were feeling around my neck area and they were like, your thyroid's swollen. And I'm 13 years old and I'm like, well, what is that? Like, I have no idea what that is. And they're like, I think you should get that checked out. And sure enough, we did. We did the ultrasound and everything. And yeah, it came back as Hashimoto's. Um, and so we kind of went from there. And at the time, I really wasn't experiencing many symptoms. I think I was kind of subclinical at the time. I was 13. And yeah, I started seeing an endocrinologist at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Did it, so you get the diagnosis, right? This is probably something that's unexpected. And right, like you said, you never heard of Hashimoto's before. Did anything change for you after that diagnosis? As you said, you're subclinical at the time, and so maybe the symptoms weren't there. Um, did anything else in your life change at that point, or kind of thinking about like, what is this thing that I have, or the way that you maybe, thought about yourself or your health?
To be perfectly honest, I think I kind of just pushed it all under the surface and was like, nothing's wrong with me. At this point, I was an elite swimmer for my age, and so I knew that I was perfect, like I was healthy. Um, so I just thought, okay, this is something that I have, but I'm not gonna go around telling people that I have this. Like, of course, my family knew, because they were with me for the diagnosis, but it wasn't something that I broadcasted or that I even wanted people to know because I thought that they would treat me differently. And I think because of that, I sort of was in denial that I even had an autoimmune condition. So I didn't really put much thought behind it, to be honest.
Right, right. Kind of knew you had it and just went on with life. And certainly you
Exactly.
continued to excel, right? And got into high
Yeah.
school and you're breaking records in Alabama, like state records there. And then, you move on to swim at UVA as a student athlete and
Yeah.
certainly kind of racking up the awards as you go. I heard another interview that you were on, and you talk about a time in your life, and it was a time of transition. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was really the first time that I think your Hashimoto's and the symptoms of that showed up. And I found it so interesting because it was a time in your life where you were experiencing a lot of transition. You were graduating from UVA, right? And you said the way that you described it at the time, there's this change in schedule and sort of change in your environment. And you said, I wasn't taking care of myself emotionally at that time, and that you felt like your emotional struggles had manifested physically. And I just, I found that so interesting because a lot that we talk about, at the Autoimmune Association and among the patient community is that, this connection between mental health and emotional health and chronic illness. And I'm wondering if you can, for the listeners, dig into the changes that were happening, in your life, the symptoms that you were experiencing from Hashimoto's, and really, why you felt that this was a physical manifestation of your emotions at the time.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the mind and the body are connected, and I think just that everything just kind of coincided. I'd come off of this huge high. I just graduated college. I went to the Olympics, won a medal, and a lot of people talk about the post-Olympic blues or depression, and I definitely went through that. Like it's really hard not to because it's such an amazing time, and I think you feel selfish saying it. It's like, well, of course you would be happy. And it's like, well, you kind of like going like this, and at some point you have to come down. And I just didn't, I just thought that if that wouldn't affect me, that I wouldn't have that come down. And I'd been consistently going to a sports psychologist throughout college, and then I graduated, so I didn't have access to that anymore. So I stopped doing that on a regular basis, and also just struggle with my identity. Like we said earlier, I was Paige the swimmer because I was just doing pro swimming, and it was never really part of my plan as a young 13-year-old girl, like we were talking about. Like I never expected myself to be a professional swimmer. I'd always wanted to go to med school, and so I thought that that
Mhm.
was going to be the next step after college, um, and then all of a sudden it wasn't, and I didn't really know how to deal with it. And I think that's when my symptoms really manifested, and um, I definitely ignored them for a while because for me it was, as long as I was swimming well, then I was fine. And I would swim well, and have a good practice, and I would come home and just feel awful. Like I felt like I was going to pass out, but it was okay because I was training well. And I think that that was just so toxic for myself. And eventually it added up, and eventually I stopped having those good practices. So it definitely caught up to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of becomes this vicious cycle. And it's something we talk about a lot about too. Certainly stress can not only trigger autoimmune disease, right? But then you find yourself stressed out, and then, gosh, that can lead to a flare. And now you're feeling maybe anxious or depressed because you can't do the things that you used to do, right? Or you can't
Right.
engage in life in the way that maybe you want to. And it's sort of this kind of vicious cycle that you get into and trying to get out of it. And I think that experience is so common, and it's such an important message to share with the audience. Kind of taking care of your physical health, but your mental health, and how those two things play together. What was also interesting about hearing you talk about this experience is kind of how you got yourself out of this and how you got yourself back on track. And I remember you saying, I really just listened, to my body, and I focused on my mental health. And then this goes back to also to, kind of Paige the person. It sounded like you expanded your passions and kind of redirected and got to know yourself as Paige the person again, as opposed to Paige the swimmer, right? Obviously, that was a big part of your life, but that shift in focus. Can you tell us, really how that shift in focus brought you back on track and how you did it?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely had to do some soul searching. So I actually took a break from swimming. I'd missed the world championship team. So I decided to travel a little bit. which I don't know if necessarily that was the best thing to do, but it was definitely a lot of fun and kind of it put into perspective for me how the rest of the world doesn't necessarily care about you know swimming unless it's like an Olympic year. But I think for me it was kind of like life and death, and then it was like, oh, like there's so much more out there. And I think like meeting other people and realizing like how much more there is out there for everyone, like that kind of let me think like, oh, well, it's really not that deep. Like I love swimming, it's so much fun, but like it's not the end all be all. And I think that kind of let me hit refresh. I started seeing my therapist again. I found a new one. That was really, really helpful. Also, started getting tests done to check my TSH levels. Um, and kind of got that back on track. So it was a lot of different factors, and it definitely took a while. I think um even when I started swimming again after those 4 months, I was still struggling a lot, but it was kind of something that I really had to work through and just be consistent with it. I just had to make sure I did everything consistently because I think um that's the most powerful prevention tool that you could have, because you never know when you're going to have a bad week or when you're going to have a really good week, but you should still take care of yourself regardless. And I think just learning that was really important.
Absolutely. It's kind of that preventative side of things, right? And I think, those
Mhm.
of us that have an autoimmune condition, and certainly in the community, it's kind of, making sure you're getting enough sleep, and your diet can have such a huge impact, right? When it comes to inflammation, and the experience with autoimmune disease, and right, kind of having that consistency can really make all the difference. I think, something that I'm hearing, and kind of to dig into this, here you are, this elite athlete, you're in a sport that you really have to push yourself physically, but kind of, part of what I'm hearing it here is sort of the message of slowing down, right? Like slowing down and not pushing through. And I think so many of us so many times are like, I'm just going to suck this up, right, and keep going and get through it, to a point where it can be detrimental. So I certainly think that is important. And I like how you got back in touch with yourself as Paige the person. And it was kind of when all these things happened and the routine, and that led to, almost healing, right? I mean, would you describe it that way? It was almost the healing for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I would describe it that way. I think I found other passions outside of sport. I picked up photography a little bit, and then I also went back to school, and I've always loved the structure of school, and I felt like that was really helpful. Um, yeah, and I think I really had this mindset before all of that happened that, I need to go, go, go. I just want to work as hard as possible, and that's how you achieve your goals. And of course, we know that's not necessarily true, and it can catch up to you. And for me, it did. It all came crashing down, um, and I kind of fell on my face, and it was like, oh well, this isn't the right way to go about things. Maybe I do need to slow things down a bit and um, take a step back, because I really had just been going at 110% for so long. I felt, especially after the Olympics were delayed a year, so I felt like I had 2 Olympic years, and I think that really took a toll on me. Um, and I think it was also just a weird time of life, because this was in 2021 going on 2022, so it was kind of post-pandemic. So um everyone was just experiencing, like, you go from social distancing and even isolation and things like that, and that kind of just I felt like a lot of things were changing for me, and I needed to kind of control what I can control. Of course, you can't control when there's going to be a worldwide pandemic, like we all experience that, but you can control how you respond to it. And I think I kind of had to learn how to do that.
Yeah, yeah, and that makes us, a lot of sense. And I think even going through the pandemic, in many ways, you're in it, and you don't even realize the impact that is happening, right, until you get out on the other side. I'm wondering too, just in terms of kind of this, this mental health connection, and we talk a lot about at the Autoimmune Association, the power of community and connection, and understanding and connecting with others who are going through something like you, right? To help
Hmm.
navigate this journey. How did connecting with others during this time, maybe speaking to the importance of that, and connection, and kind of sharing when you're struggling. You mentioned finding another therapist and how that kind of got you back on track, but kind of what it meant to you, and who was around you to help navigate through this as well.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I've had such an outreach just from my personal circle because only my really, really close friends even knew that I had an autoimmune condition, and it wasn't really something that we talked about. And so just to have all of my other friends like reach out and support me and be like, "Wow, I didn't know you were going through this, but um, I'm here for you." And that was really awesome just to see like the community that I had. I guess I kind of felt alone in having this disease and felt like I had a secret that I was keeping from
Mhm,
everyone.
mhm,
And it honestly was really empowering. I thought that people would treat me differently and think that I was weak, but they actually looked at me the opposite. They looked at me as this really strong person, like, wow, she faces adversity, but she's still able to do these amazing things. And I think so many people out there are like that, but they just like kind of push it down. And that's exactly what I was doing. So it's been really fun. And I've also just had so many, the best thing for me is to have the um, younger kids reach out to me and be like, well, I have this too. Like, can I still do these things? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. Like, you can do anything you set your mind to. And that's been my favorite part about the whole thing is just like being able to inspire others. Um, that's been really cool. I thought that it was gonna be, oh, poor Paige, but it's really been like, oh, like good for her type thing.
yeah, absolutely. There's so much empowerment in that, and I think you touched on this. It's not something to be ashamed of or hide from. And I think so many people, when they kind of find their voice and step into it and share it, it's almost taking it back and owning it. And it almost becomes like this superpower, right? Like you said, like, I have this. It doesn't define me, but let me share your story. I want to share, and inspire, and what you can do with that story, by coming out with it, I think is so great. And then you find other people's in the community who can help and support, along that journey, so you're not walking it alone, right? I think that is just so key to managing it, and managing the mental health aspects of all of this. Something else that I kind of hear in all of this, and your story of realizing, like, my gosh, I can't just push through this, right? I got to slow down, and I got to find something different, is really self-advocacy. It's another thing we talk a lot about within the autoimmune community, right? Because sometimes, you find yourself with this disease, and you know you're advocating for yourself even when maybe you didn't plan for it, right? Whether that's looking for a diagnosis, or finding the right treatments, or the right physician who understands you, and can help you on this journey. What can you tell people who are listening today about the importance of self-advocacy?
Yeah, I think it is so important. You have to be your own self advocate and you have to listen to your own body. I remember one physician. So I take Synthroid, which is, a TSH derivative, or I don't even know exactly how it works, but it's supposed to help Hashimoto's. And one of my physicians really wanted me to increase my dosage. And I tried it and I felt terrible increasing the dosage. And they were like, "Well, clinically, you really need to take this." And I'm like, "Well, the way that I feel, like that's more important to me than the numbers that my blood work runs." And so that was kind of, I had to make those choices as an adult. I think as a younger child, like, I wouldn't be able to, speak up for myself that way. I would kinda just do whatever, um, anyone told me to. And also through the outreach, I found out there's, alternate therapies for autoimmune conditions. I've taken on a gluten-free diet, which I think has really been helpful. Really notice a difference on that, and I feel much better since doing that. Um, that's not to say that's a fix, or that that's going to work for everyone, but yeah, I think um, not being able to, or not being afraid of going, like, trying different things, and also, but you also need to know what works for you. I think that's so important for self-advocacy, because everyone's so different,
Mhm.
and I think people's bodies react differently to different medications or different diets or lifestyles. We're all our own person. I think it's really important to know yourself, and for me, that took a while, but, and I'm still working on it, like, I'm still trying to figure that out, but I think it's so important.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's kind of that shared decision making and being able to have that dialogue with your, healthcare providers and things that work. And you mentioned the diet aspect and the gluten and kind of trying things, right? Because it is this lifelong journey, and things can evolve and change. And finding a place that works for you, like personalized what works for you. Um, I think is so important, and you find a lot of that really by advocating for yourself. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us. You know, um, I would say, kind of going through these experiences with the transitions and learning about yourself and your health and Paige the person, and kind of having some ups and downs with that. Can you share a little bit about how maybe you manage life transitions and living with a chronic illness in your life today that maybe looked a little bit different than what you did before? Like, what are some of the big takeaways or lessons that you learned?
I think now I've learned to be a little bit more free and rolling with the punches, rather than, "Oh, like, you know, this is a big change, I don't like it," just kind of expecting it. Um, I've recently moved to Washington, DC, and I think I had to prep myself for that, and knowing that this is gonna be a big change. It's okay to be a little bit stressed about it, but don't get stressed about being stressed, type thing. Because I think that definitely happened to me post-college. I realized how stressed I was, which was just creating this cycle, and I was getting even more stressed, and it's just knowing that that's normal. Like, we're gonna go through big life changes. Um, just knowing how to mitigate that, like, I prep for that by keeping my schedule as consistent as possible, um, like, controlling what I could control. It was my choice to move, but I knew that, like, I'm gonna wake up at the same time, I'm gonna, stay consistent with my gluten-free diet, I'm gonna, um, keep my swimming schedule like this, and, continue to go to therapy, and I've gotten into journaling as well, which I found is really helpful. But yeah, just, like, trying to keep what I can keep consistent when there's a lot of change, because I think that period post-college, like, I changed too many factors at once, and that really
Mhm.
caught up to me.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, you're so important, right? You're like that. Try not to stress about being stressed, right?
Mhm.
Which does take some practice and some mindfulness, and you're really being kind to yourself. And I love how routine and consistency, again helped with that. So my last question, March is Autoimmune Awareness Month. So, for the Autoimmune Association, this is obviously, a big time for us to do exactly that, right? Raise awareness around the more than 100 autoimmune diseases that exist out there, and to provide resources for individuals to help them on their journey to, diagnosis and treatment. You're here today sharing your story. Can you tell us a little bit about what Autoimmune Awareness Month means to you, and why you're dedicating your time to raising awareness?
Yeah, first of all, I think it's so cool that there's a whole month dedicated to autoimmune awareness,
We do too. We
especially
love it.
it's so cool, right?
Right.
And I think had I known that as 13-year-old Paige, I think I would have felt a little bit more accepted or inclined to share my autoimmune condition rather than hide it. So I
Mhm.
hope that by raising awareness, we're able to encourage those um, younger kids, or even people get diagnosed at any age. Just like this is like there's a whole community for it, and I think that's so cool. I think it's empowering to be able to show that and for us to share that together. And yeah, I think for me, it's cool now being able to take a part with the Autoimmune Association as well. Um, I think I've come full circle from being that little kid who was afraid to tell people that she had this going on and felt like I was too strong to have a condition like this. And to now where I feel stronger for being able to share it and being able to inspire others. And I hope that if this message just reached one person, like that would be enough for me. So I hope that gets across to someone.
It absolutely has. And there is so much strength in vulnerability. I think that's a lesson to learn in life too, that being vulnerable can open up so many doors, and help so many people. And I really just want to thank you, for being vulnerable and sharing your story and showing up for our listeners here today. It means so much. We're really grateful for you, and so thankful that you're helping to raise awareness, about autoimmune disease. So thank you so much, Paige, for being here with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's truly been an honor, and thank you for giving me this platform just to share my voice. And happy Autoimmune Awareness Month.
Yeah, happy Autoimmune Awareness Month to you, and more to come. I know we're gonna stay in contact. So thank you again, and to everyone listening. If you want to learn more about autoimmune disease and the work that we're doing here at the Autoimmune Association, visit autoimmune.org and follow us on social media. And be sure to join us again, for more powerful stories on our podcast, Autoimmune Voices, Threads of Hope. You can catch new episodes right here on YouTube. So with that, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.